Hi, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log for Thursday, July 30th, 96 days to Election Day. 96 days, 96 days, unless, of course, remember the biggest advice out there, vote as early as possible. This election has a real possibility of becoming a major fustercluck. So, vote as early as you legally can. Make sure your ballot gets in. Whether you mail it, and if you mail it mid-October at the latest, you got to get that in the mail. In-person early voting if you can. If you have to do it on Election Day itself, okay. Just get to the polls early. The main thing is make sure your vote counts. Make sure you're registered. Do all of this with plenty of time to spare, because it's going to be a mess. The Republicans are really going to try to mess you up and use the pandemic to their advantage. We saw it in Wisconsin. We saw it in Georgia. We've seen it everywhere. Closing polling sites, just making it hard to vote because they don't want you to vote. All right, so there's that. I'll do a little follow the money series of stories here. Follow the money, or even better, well, follow the money is how you discover what's going on. It's not any kind of solution. You can follow the money all day long. It'll take you to terrible places, but once you get there, you got to decide how to fix it. So you got to abolish the money. So this is really an abolish money series of stories. The one I want to recommend to you first is from Roar, R-O-A-R, magazine, roarmag.org. Reclaiming Public Health, the Communalist Healthcare Model. The pandemic has exposed the failure of hierarchical, profit-based healthcare systems, but social ecology offers a model to democratize public health. Author Justin B. Gifford. The gist of it you can kind of get from that first blurb there and from the headline. Got to take the money, got to take the capitalism, got to take the hierarchy, the patriarchy out of medicine. Under our current system, nurses are underpaid, they are abused, overworked. So it's a nice little op-ed in support of nurses. The author, Justin B. Gifford, is a hospital physician assistant and a former Army combat medic. He says, I've come to see nursing not as a lesser profession, but as essential work by venerated colleagues. Without them, a patient's recovery would be next to impossible. And for-profit healthcare works just like any other for-profit enterprise. In Seattle, for example, after the big spike in the coronavirus story, they announced layoffs. Nurses were just furloughed, let go. The whole concept of any business where you have just enough inventory to meet demand and no more, because any more would cost you money. To buy it, to store it. No, you have to have just enough. I mean, this has been standard operating procedure now for many, many, many years. That just enough inventory thing. The same thing goes for labor. You have just enough labor. You can't have one or two more people because that's going to cost you way too much money. You have just enough to meet the need. And of course, that doesn't work in medicine, where it's been shown that we've needed stockpiles of equipment, of PPE, stockpiles of resources, and plenty of folks on hand, plenty of doctors and nurses to meet the demand of an emergency, of a pandemic. But no, they're operating like any other for-profit business, so you have just enough equipment, you have just enough labor, and then the emergency becomes a disaster, a nightmare. And then somehow, heroically, they get through it. We all bang our pots for them, and we thank them for their service. And then as soon as the emergency is over, they're furloughs, layoffs. Yeah. The author here asking for a communalist healthcare model. Take the capitalists and oligarchs out of medicine. Of course, it's a no-brainer. Take them out of everything. Oh, but then where would the innovation be? That's one of their favorite arguments, the capitalists and the oligarchs. They love the word innovation. We heard it yesterday in the testimony from the Four Horsemen of tech. All about how capitalism creates innovation, as if there'd be no innovation without it. Why? Give me one good reason. Building a better product, serving people, how does that motivation go away when you take away profit? It doesn't. That's the big lie. That's the big lie. It doesn't go away. He writes, there are examples of self-organized systems around the world that set a precedent for a communalist healthcare project. He gives several examples. But then, of course, points out that hierarchical systems right here are still at play within our institutions. We will not see a just society until we rid ourselves of these systems of oppression. This is not done by simply destroying the old, but in positively envisioning the new and working to build it. Care workers should be at the forefront of organizing in a grassroots fashion to actualize a communalist healthcare project. Those who want to show their appreciation for healthcare workers in the wake of COVID-19 ought to stand in solidarity with them as they assert their autonomy and fight for a new system that values the people and public health over the profits. Again, this Justin B. Gifford, a hospital physician assistant and former Army combat medic. Nice little op-ed, wanted to point you to it. Well, speaking of medicine and money, now have you all had your little fun with the demon semen doctor? Dr. Emmanuel, one of the so-called frontline doctors who had their weird little press conference about hydroxychloroquine. Now, you know the story, right? Don Jr. shared the tweet. It went viral very, very quickly. And the Orange Menace himself gets up and tries to defend this crazy person who believes in that medicine is using the blood of aliens, among many other weird things she believes. There's a vaccine being developed to stop people from being religious. And what else? Oh, of course, the demon semen, the astral plane sex with devils. And yeah, she's got lots of really interesting, good ideas. Well, she was among these doctors pushing for hydroxychloroquine. And of course, it's all part of this great landscape of conspiracy theories and fake news and just general weirdness out there. And everybody had their fun, and they made their demon semen jokes, and okay. By the way, there's one thing, I'm going to be kind of a stick in the mud right now. Don't use the marked safe blue triangular flag, that blue pennant, that little graphic. That was designed kind of like an Amber Alert or something, a kid's picture on a milk bottle. It was designed as a public service. If there's some terrible tragedy, you have the opportunity to say, no, I'm good, I'm safe. Yeah, there was a tidal wave here in my coastal town, but I'm sure everybody wants to know, all my friends and family want to know that I'm okay. So this little marked safe pennant. Well, everybody's using that for a joke now. Anytime something like weird comes up, people are using the marked safe pennant, blue pennant, as a joke. And I get it. I love memes and jokes and little graphic funnies. I love that. But it's so, first of all, it's just tired. It's so entirely played. Marked safe from devil sex or alien blood or something. People, so I'm just saying, I'm being a stick in the mud. Make your jokes, but you know what? Don't use the marked safe blue pennant anymore as a joke, because then when it really is needed, it's less effective. All right, there's my stick in the mud moment. Now, the thing about this so-called America's Frontline Doctors, another article I'll share with you, HuffPost has a really good, comprehensive kind of deep dive into the funding of all this. See, we got to put this in proper perspective here. This is not just a couple quack doctors who took it upon themselves to call a little press conference. Let me read a little bit of this to you from Huffington Post. A seemingly obscure Capitol Hill press conference by a fringe group of self-proclaimed medical experts quickly became, on Monday, the most widely seen propaganda video about the coronavirus after Breitbart News live-streamed it on Facebook. The Post racked up tens of millions of views across social media in a matter of hours, far surpassing the traffic of the infamous Plandemic disinformation video. It grabbed the attention of President Donald Trump and his son Donald Trump Jr., who had his Twitter account partially suspended for sharing a link to the video. So this is the story we know. And yes, it's easy to make jokes and it's all ridiculous, but there's power here. And it is well orchestrated. The video featured a string of right-wing talking points that criticized lockdown measures, demonized public health officials, called for schools to reopen, and urged Americans not to wear face masks. The speakers, who were all portrayed as doctors, often declared hydroxychloroquine a cure for COVID-19. No legitimate medical organizations have recognized any cure for COVID-19, and multiple clinical trials, link included here, have shown hydroxychloroquine is not beneficial in treating the virus. And yeah, that describes a little bit of the Dr. Emanuel, sex with demons, and many in government are reptilian. But then this article goes on, I think, to provide an important service here. I think some important information that we need to go to the next level of this story and understand why it's more than just funny and outrageous. This is deep-seated trouble here. This doctors group, this so-called America's Frontline Doctors, they were organized by the Tea Party patriots. Reading again. Monday's live-streamed event featuring the America's Frontline Doctors group was organized by Tea Party patriots, a wealthy Republican donor-backed nonprofit that, in partnership with FreedomWorks and other right-wing dark money groups, launched the Save Our Country Coalition in April to push for America's rapid reopening. Jenny Beth Martin, Tea Party Patriots co-founder, spoke at the conference alongside the self-proclaimed frontline doctors, urging people to call their elected officials to demand access to hydroxychloroquine. Simone Gold, the founder of America's Frontline Doctors, has been a go-to source for Fox News on the so-called dangers of strict coronavirus measures and has spoken at several reopen rallies. Tea Party Patriots is clearly involved in both efforts, and the Monday press conference was directly in line with Save Our Country Coalition's push to downplay the pandemic. One of the people spearheading the Save Our Country Coalition efforts is GOP operative and Trump economic advisor Stephen Moore, who last year withdrew from consideration for a job with the Federal Reserve and joined a group of entrepreneurs seeking to create a cryptocurrency central bank. See, now, this is what I'm talking about. This is way more than a goofy little conspiracy theory. If you saw the most recent PBS Frontline about Alex Jones, there's big money, and not just the Alex Jones model of selling snake oil, but we're talking real money, dark money, big money from GOP donors. There's this whole underground, and they're the people behind the anti-mask movement. They're the people behind reopening, which we all know happened way too early. We saw the lockdown protests, infamously here in the suburbs, just right outside Milwaukee. Yeah, it was just reported yesterday by the Milwaukee Independent that the Bradley Foundation, if you're in Milwaukee, you know the Bradley Foundation, major source of funding for right-wing groups, over $854 million in assets, gave grants to FreedomWorks Foundation and the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Foundation this year to specifically assist with their efforts to rapidly reopen the economy amidst the coronavirus pandemic. They're part of this whole Save Our Country coalition. The Save Our Country coalition honorary chairman is conservative economist Arthur Laffer, He's a kind of a cult hero with this crowd. If you don't know who Arthur Laffer is, do a quick little internet research on Arthur Laffer, Laffer. Now, I know I'm sounding like Alex Jones, right? I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist. There's nothing theoretical about this. This is very real. There's a right-wing propaganda machine out there. Things like Breitbart News and InfoWars and Tea Party Patriots and these other groups. There's big money, big donors. And then we see the crazy little folks they put out in front of the camera, and we think we can just laugh it off as some little fringe group of crazies. No. These are just the people they're putting in front of the camera. We got powerful forces with serious agendas and lots of money creating a big damn show, and then convincing the most vulnerable among us, convincing them that they're part of some great freedom movement. And then, again, as we saw in the hearings yesterday, Jim Jordan is a perfect example of this, crying about censorship, because now these so-called talking points about freedom and reopening and anti-mask, even though they're cynically bought and paid for and filled with misinformation and lies and bad science, God forbid if anybody criticizes them, and even worse, if the tech companies take them down, as they did with these so-called doctors yesterday and Don Jr.'s tweet, oh, well, then the Jim Jordans of the world can cry censorship. They're right about one thing. The kinds of things that get censored usually are right-wing, because now the right wing, more often than not, coincides with the dangerous, not just wrong, but dangerous information. I don't have the story in front of me, but it was reported a couple months ago that Facebook, I think it was it Facebook or Twitter? One of them had this algorithm that automatically blacked out obvious misinformation, especially dangerous misinformation. But they had to withdraw that algorithm because it kept taking out conservatives, and they didn't want to appear biased. But it's just the fact is, the old saying, reality favors the liberals. I'm using liberal in a very general sense here. It's just a fact. So every crazy conspiracy theory and fake news and bad medicine and just all this junk out there doesn't come from nowhere. It's planted and nurtured and groomed and displayed by actual behind-the-scenes players with big money and big power, because it's in their interest. It's in their financial interest to force workers back into dangerous jobs, to reopen the economy. And by the way, I always put quotes around the economy. Whenever you hear that term, the economy, what it really means is for the benefit, for the profit of the very few. That's what the economy is. Nobody knows still why this hydroxychloroquine thing is so front and center. You just have to assume that somebody's got money in it. And then you get into the whole cryptocurrency investors angle. I don't know what the hell's going on there. And then Fox News, Tucker Carlson got into the act. I guess he back from his little fishing trip. And he showed the so-called doctor's video, the demon semen doctor, after it was taken down by the tech companies. He went on this big tirade about how, well, I'm not under their thumb. I can show it. They can't ban me from showing it, so he shows it and talks to Don Jr. about it. So, yeah, between Fox News and the right-wing talkers on radio and these big money funders, that's why it always comes back to money for me. It always comes back to money. I honestly don't know how you fight these guys if money is the only weapon. We have to somehow raise more money than them. We just have to shout them down with a bigger megaphone, and we get into this arms race. Yeah, real people, real money, real power. Not just crazy folks we can make jokes about. Take away the money, take away the profit motive, and you've left them completely impotent and powerless. We really need to understand this. If we want to fight them, it's more than just a little tweak here and there. I'm very uncomfortable about censoring speech on social media. Very uncomfortable about that. Very uncomfortable about leaving those decisions to the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and others. Really, there's only one solution, overarching solution, and that is to destroy the motive. We have to do everything in our power to take money out of the center of our lives, to eliminate it as the sole currency of power. We have to democratize and communalize healthcare, medicine, housing, education, manufacturing, services, everything. The entire so-called economy, at its very center now, the creamy nougat in the middle, is money and profit. Well, we've got to replace the creamy center of the economy with justice, fairness, equity. Not a pipe dream. This can happen with proper legislation. Taxing billionaires out of existence. Making unions the norm. Until we wake up one day and the great bulk of our economic lives is happening within the realm of nonprofit and worker-owned entities, democratically run, profit motive eliminated, so there's no reason for any of this. As long as we're playing under their rules, they're going to win the game. They're writing the rules, they're refereeing the game as they play the game. How are we going to win? Nope, we have to change the rules of the game. We cannot beat them at their own game. We can't just try to toe-to-toe match their propaganda with so-called good propaganda. That is a losing battle. If we want to win in the marketplace of ideas, we have to make that marketplace possible. We have to build that marketplace. We have no marketplace for ideas right now. The so-called marketplace of ideas is a poor fledgling little cousin to the real marketplace of money and power. Oh, you go off to your little attic room there. Oh, you philosophers and academics and intellectuals. And you want to have a little marketplace of ideas? You go ahead. But off to your own room where you'll be harmless. Yeah, we're playing their game. We got to stop it. So don't be satisfied with your own little smug idea that crazy demon semen doctor is beneath you. And you can make your jokes and be happy. Oh, look, I'm on the better team. No, we have to understand where that kind of thing is coming from. We got to follow the money, and then we have to end the money. We got to end it. We got to end this system. And then that does one other really important thing, okay? And that is that the legions of people who fall for this stuff, it kind of sits in their wheelhouse. They're uneducated, they're ignorant, they're clinging on to some feeling of their own power over things they don't understand. There are lots of ways you can psychoanalyze and try to figure out the deplorables. I've said many times that I have no interest in compromising with them, in even necessarily understanding them. But the point is, if and when we are successful in eliminating the dark money and the dark power from the world, we have to bring the deplorables along. Right now, they seem irredeemable. There's that famous picture, we've all seen it, of the mob of white folks at a lynching. The one guy's looking at the camera, pointing up to one of the victims. At some point in the very near future, we're going to see pictures. The anti-mask rallies, the reopen rallies, the Tucker Carlsons and the Alex Joneses and their followers. In the very near future, we're going to see their pictures in the history books and on the history websites. And we're going to look at these pictures in disbelief. Boy, were they on the wrong side. How in the world did they ever fall to such a low ebb of humanity? As of today, 154,000 or something like that. 154,000 people dead of the virus. And people packed in bars and on the beaches, having fun. Yeah, their pictures are going to be in the history books. Callously unaware, willfully ignorant of the pain, suffering, and death that not only surrounds them, but they are literally creating by their actions. Because the virus doesn't hop around on the birds and the bees. No, the virus only has one mode of transportation, and that's the human body. And the fact that transmission continues and deaths continue to climb is the direct result of willful and callous ignorance. And even worse, we just don't care. Some people are just fine with it. They're just fine with it. The research tells us that a great percentage of the infections are passed from asymptomatic carriers. Carriers who never knew they had it, but they spread it exponentially. And so, yes, we'll see pictures of 2020, of people partying in bars, rallying to reopen, carrying their self-righteous signs. I want a haircut. We'll see all these people in the history books. I have no doubt at all. Just like the guy pointing to the lynching victim. It's going to look just like that. Going to look just like that. And I haven't even spoken about the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Factor that in as well. Because those who are denying the Black Lives Matter movement, calling peaceful protesters moms and dads and veterans and kids, calling them anarchists and terrorists, well, there's already a stark and clear contrast for most of us. Like looking at old footage from the Edmund Pettus Bridge, we can see who the good guys are and the bad guys are. It's really not too tough to tell. Most of us know this today. It's not an opinion. It's not being on one side of an issue and, well, you have to listen to both sides. And no, it's none of that. It's damn right and wrong. And most of us see it. History will see it. And the same big money, dark money forces behind virus denial, those same forces are behind the anti-Black Lives Matter movement, the so-called Blue Lives Matter, the All Lives Matter, the branding of protests as anarchists and terrorists. Just like Karen with her I Want a Haircut sign. It's not just a little grassroots mom-and-pop movement. No. Calculated, coordinated, funded, organized. And that's where we are. Follow the money, eliminate profit, invite the deplorables to accept redemption, and leave the rest for the history books. All right, that's the log for today. I'm Charles Purcell. I love you. Talk to you tomorrow.